Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So I have not updated my 2025 NHL mock draft in about 2 months at this point. I believe I did one in mid-January, like a week after the World Juniors. And considering we just had the trade deadline where not only some picks got traded, but also teams kind of declared themselves as sellers for the rest of the season. My New York Islanders, Boston Bruins, Philadelphia Flyers, and Seattle Kraken, they're looking forward to the 2025 draft, not the end of the 2024-2025 season. They most likely are not making the playoffs. So yeah, we're going to be updating this. We're going to be doing a top 25 for this. Last time I think I did a top 20. The next time we do this, it'll be the full first round. Then it'll be like a top 50. Then we'll probably do like a full 2-round mock draft or something like that. That's going to be like an hour-long video. Jesus. But yeah, we are going to be diving into the top 25. Here is the current order. San Jose, Chicago, Buffalo, Nashville, Seattle, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Anaheim, Boston, Islanders, Utah, Montreal, Detroit, St. Louis. Pittsburgh gets New York's pick because of the JT Miller and the Pedersen deal. Vancouver, Columbus, Montreal gets Calgary's pick because of the Sean Monahan trade when Calgary was still trying to contend. Ottawa, who might not have their first-round pick, we'll get into that because of the Dadonov. They might decide to give up this year's compared to 2026. Calgary gets New Jersey's pick from the Markstrom trade. Columbus gets Minnesota's pick from the David Jiricek trade. Los Angeles keeps their pick. They didn't do shit at the deadline besides Kuzmenko. Then we got a Philadelphia back-to-back. The Colorado one's from the Sean Walker deal, and the Edmonton one, I believe, is from trading out of the Florida pick that they got in the Claude Giroux trade. Edmonton decided to pick Sam O'Reilly with that, and then finally, Tampa's pick goes to Nashville from the Tanner Jeannot trade at the 2023 deadline. So yeah, when looking at it, in season, only Minnesota traded their first-round pick to Columbus this year, and Dallas traded their first-round pick to San Jose in the Granlund deal. Most of these traded first-round picks in the Pedersen deal, obviously, and Miller deal. But yeah, most of these happened like in the offseason or like years before. And when looking at this year's deadline, yeah, they really tapped into their later first-round picks. But yeah, we are going to be getting into this. Again, this is not going to be my own personal rankings. I'm just looking at these teams, what they maybe need, although I am a best available kind of guy when it comes to the draft. Sometimes position does play a decent factor in what teams need in terms of a bigger, smaller, more skilled guy. Yeah, we're going to get into it, and we are starting out with the San Jose Sharks, and I am going with Matthew Schaefer. When talking about best available, best position, I do think Matthew Schaefer is my number one prospect. I understand if you have someone else, but I think especially with San Jose, Malcolm Celebrini's already looking like a franchise number one center, already like a low-end number one center, on top of having Will Smith really come alive of late. They already have William Eklund. I like their defenseman prospects a decent amount. Sam Dickinson, I think, can be a good top-pair guy. Cagnani's been very good in the AHL, as well as Shakir. But Matthew Schaefer is that franchise number one defenseman. 22 points in 17 games with the Erie Otters, was Canada's best player, arguably, at the World Juniors in the 4 periods that we got to see from him. Yeah, 6'2", skates like the wind, just does everything at a very high level, and he's a September 2nd birthday. You might hear this a lot of times. We're talking about the draft. The cutoff is September 15th, so he was 2 weeks away from being a 2026 draft-eligible guy. That does matter to a degree. If someone's 10 months older, that's big in terms of development. So he's already one of the best prospects, and especially when you tack on the fact that he's younger than a lot younger than some of the guys at the top. He's the number one guy right now going to the San Jose Sharks. Second overall, Michael Misa. When entering this season, I wouldn't blame you if you had him 4th coming in, but he has just utterly dominated the OHL. 58 goals, 66 assists, 124 points in 60 games. One of the best draft years we have seen of the 21st century in the OHL, on par with guys like Patrick Kane. So when looking at Michael Misa, he is 6'1". It's not like he's some undersized guy. When looking at it prior with the guy like James Higgins, that is kind of undersized, 5'9", 5'10", there maybe was some concern with Connor Bedard and another smaller center, considering Frank Nazar is also kind of small. Don't have to worry about with that with Michael Misa. You go with the center. If they had the first overall pick, it would definitely be a debate. Do you go with Schaefer? Do you go with Misa, considering you took Leshinov last year? Thankfully, in a way, because they're not picking first in this, the decision is made for them. You go with Michael Misa. You get that elite second forward. Maybe he plays second line center. Maybe you bump him up to the wing or something like that. But Chicago's rebuild, if they get a top 2 pick and they're able to snag Misa, I'm feeling a hell of a lot better about it because Misa is a damn good prospect. At 3rd overall, our first little shocker, I'm going with Anton Frundell. When looking at this guy, how he has played in the year of 2025 is arguably the best out of any prospect, arguably better than Michael Misa. Down the stretch for his team in the 2nd-tier Swedish league, he utterly dominated. He was above a point per game, ended up finishing with 25 points in 29 games in that 2nd Swedish tier. He finally really got going after dealing with an injury and honestly just not looking that good at the junior level. He is such a high IQ player. He's already built extremely well. He's like 6'1", 6'2", 200 pounds, like pushing 205. Just an absolute menace out there. And I think for Buffalo, you ideally would want a defenseman in this spot, but the gap between Frundell and even a Hagens and a Martone and that next defenseman is pretty big. So I think that they take Anton Frundell. They take a swing on him. Not even a swing. He's not even he has a very high floor. But I think considering the way that he's been rising and maybe some other guys might have been falling off that we're going to get to relatively soon, I think Anton Frundell definitely has made a strong case for a top 5 pick. And I think him behind a Tage Thompson as a second line center eventually overcome Thompson as that number 1 center because he's like 9 years younger than Tage Thompson. But would be very good for Buffalo. They have a bunch of other young center prospects like Ostland and Helenius, but Frundell's far better than them. You take the best player. You take Anton Frundell at 4th overall. I am going with James Hagens to the Nashville Predators. Hagens had by far the best draft year, -1. Just hasn't really dominated like we expected at the college level this year, which has been very underwhelming because, of all people, of all prospects, I'm going to try to meet ride Hagens to 1st overall and push an agenda because he's from Long Island, but that has just not been the case. Only 9 goals, 34 points in 34 games at Boston College. Again, playing with Ryan Leonard, playing with Gabriel Perreault. You expected, I don't know, why did I say Gabriel? Gabe Perreault. You expected him to just eventually flip a switch and have like a 3-week stretch where he plays 6 games and puts up 13 points and just dominates. That didn't happen, and especially the goal numbers are very underwhelming. You still got to respect what he did in his draft year -1. And again, still to be point per game at the college level is still very impressive, but compared to a Misa who's historic in the OHL, Schaefer's just looking like that ideal franchise defenseman, and Hagens already did have some things going against him considering his frame at only 5'10". I still love the vision. I still love the playmaking. I love the passing. I think he can be a number 1 center, but there's definitely a lot more question marks. So as a result, I have him falling to 4th overall. At 5th overall, the Seattle Kraken select Porter Martone. I think this would be a pretty obvious selection at this point. I think we do have this top 5 forming of Hagens, Frundell, Misa, Schaefer, and Martone. You take Martone. You take Martone, no doubt. Although he hasn't been goal scoring at the same rate in his first 16 games, he had 16 goals, 16 assists. He still has 30 goals, 59 assists, 89 points in 50 games right now. Pretty impressive. Almost 2 points per game. What's that? 1.8 points per game on pace of a guy like a Quinton Byfield. The skating does scare me. Once he gets to his top speed, he's fine. He has a fine top speed for a guy that's 6'3", but his acceleration first couple steps are a little bit wonky, and that might limit him at the NHL level. But the skill and the size that this guy has, he can be a legit 30, 40, and 70 kind of guy at the NHL level, especially with the centers that the Seattle Kraken have coming up within the system. Again, Seattle would love to get a defenseman in this draft, but I think the difference between Martone and the other 2 defensemen that I have relatively soon, there is such a gap. Martone's not a sure thing by any stretch, but I think you go Porter Martone, you take the best player available, and then maybe snag a defenseman with your 2nd-round pick, or trade up because you have all those picks from Tampa Bay to maybe pick someone, swap a future 1st-round pick for a mid-1st-round pick this year. Next up, the Pittsburgh Penguins take Roger McQueen. They definitely take a swing. When looking at Pittsburgh, I think they can take this swing. McQueen is a little bit risky considering his injuries. He had a similar slipped back disc injury that Caden Lindstrom had. Caden Lindstrom's just getting back now. Thankfully, McQueen has been back. He's played 3 games in the WHL. He has 8 goals. Not in those 3 games. On the season, he has 8 goals, 4 assists, 12 points in 11 games. But yeah, he's back. He's playing. Thank God. There is serious upside with his 6'5" frame, but there is serious risk. If I'm Pittsburgh, I'm looking for upside in this draft. You think that the next 2 years, when drafts are going to be really good, especially 2026, 2027, you're going to be a top 5 team. So try to take a swing on a guy like Roger McQueen. If you don't hit on him, hopefully, probably, they're going to land either DuPont or McKenna in the next 2 drafts. I have no doubts. So yeah, swing on McQueen, potential, legit number 1 center potential. I think it would be a decent swing by them. At 7th, Philadelphia selects Radim Murtka. They definitely need a high-end defenseman prospect. And at worst-case scenario, Radim Murtka is going to be the replacement for Rasmus Ristolainen. He's a 6'6" right-handed defenseman that has really shown flashes offensively, was barely playing in Czechia, comes over to the WHL. You don't know what to expect. 33 points in 38 games, again, at 6'6". And defensively, he is very sound at stopping the rush. He should be more physical. Hopefully, they can develop that. Hopefully, Torts can get in his head. But yeah, Radim Murtka is, in my opinion, probably the number 1 defenseman right now, and the Philadelphia Flyers would definitely beef up their overall prospect pool in under 23 core by snagging someone like that. And I think that they should be looking at defensemen, especially within the 6 to 10 range. At 8th overall, I have the Anaheim Ducks selecting Victor Eklund. Anaheim goes back to Sweden like they did in 2023. Eklund has been highly productive this year in that second-tier Swedish league. Again, Frundell ended up catching up to him and exceeding him in points per game, but still 31 points in 42 games in the Swedish second tier, not juniors. He's only 5'10", but he plays like he's 6'3". He is an absolute beast on the boards, especially. And yeah, he's a very skilled guy, much like his brother William Eklund. Doesn't quite have the offensive ceiling as William Eklund, but yeah, I think he can be a very effective top six. You're not selecting at 8th overall for middle six, top six potential first liner, and play with a guy like Leo Carlson in Anaheim. I think Anaheim would be more inclined to go forward, especially because Jackson Lacombe is really broken out. They still have Mintyukov. They still have Tristan Luneau, Olin Zellweger, Steen Solberg they got in the first round last year. So I'd expect Anaheim to go to go forward in their top 10 pick, and I think Victor Eklund is well worthy of a top 10 pick. The Boston Bruins selecting within the top 10. I have them taking Jackson Smith. When looking at them, they really don't have jack shit in terms of young defenseman prospects. They do have Mason Lohrei, but I think Jackson Smith would definitely supersede him on the potential in terms of the Boston Bruins blue line. He's 6'3". He moves extremely well for his size. He's able to get up there in the rush. He's able to dominate at the blue line. He has 46 points in 62 games. Solid defensively, but he needs to be a little bit more consistent. Has a pretty solid compete level. I think he'd be a pretty damn good Boston Bruin. The New York Islanders at 10th overall select Caleb Desnoyers. I am kind of wish casting this in a way because he's consensusly viewed as like a 5th or 8th overall, but I do think Anaheim wouldn't really take a guy like him considering all the centers that they have, and Boston definitely needs a defenseman. So I have Desnoyers going to the Islanders, and he's kind of a prototypical Islanders player, mainly known for his two-way game. Great last year in the QMJHL with 56 points in 60 games. This year has taken yet another step offensively, 34 goals, 46 assists, 80 points in 54 games. Yeah, I think he can be a low-end number one center, 65 to 70 points, probably more so a 55 to 65 second-line center, which you definitely take if you're the New York Islanders, especially at 10th overall. I would definitely be on board with that pick, especially now that they already have two high-end. If you told me that they were picking here a year ago and they didn't have Cole Eiserman or Richie, I'd want some like high upside guy, but I'm perfectly fine with Desnoyers at 10th overall. 11th overall, the Utah Hockey Club, Kayshawn Atchison. This guy is a beast, physical beast. He will lay out your favorite player, and he'll become your favorite player if he's on your team. He does have some offense. He has like 42 points this year in the OHL. He's responsible defensively. I think for Utah, their young forwards are kind of NHL proven at this point. Gunther, Cooley, Keller's not even that old. Michelli, Josh Doan looks pretty solid. So I think that they probably do go defense, even though they did use a first-round pick on Simashev in 2023, and they do have Maverick Lamoureux. I think defense probably makes sense here in terms of bringing in a physical two-way guy that can be a very, very good second pair defenseman. 12th overall, I have Lyndon Lakovich heading to the Montreal Canadiens. They get some size within their middle six, especially with Kirby Dach kind of being a complete unknown at this point, considering his injury history. 6'4", 195 pounds, ideal power forward. Has become a lot more physical this season. That's something that he got criticized last year for. He's really embraced his size on the Moose Jaw Warriors. He has 23 goals, 28 assists, 51 points in 41 games. Yeah, I could just see him being a very solid 25 and 30, 55 point second liner for the Montreal Canadiens. That's definitely something that they perhaps need. Sticking in the Atlantic Division, 13th overall, I got the Detroit Red Wings selecting Carter Bear. Carter Bear, if he hits, can have absolutely monster offensive impact. That's what I'm looking for if I'm the Detroit Red Wings. Defense is obviously set. Goaltenders, not selecting a goaltender at 13th overall, and they're definitely set there. You got to go forward, and Carter Bear is about as good as it gets within this range. 57 points in 67 games last year for the Everett Silver Tips. This year, 40 goals, 42 assists, 82 points in 56 games. He might end up with like 50 and 50 in the WHL. 6 foot, a very twitchy player, very, very good skater, and can create. I think he'd be a good fit on that second line potentially for the Detroit Red Wings, not 6'3". 14th overall, Blues selected Justin Carboneau. When looking at him, he has 46 goals, 41 assists, 87 points in 58 games. When looking at a potential of bringing him and Snuggerud to the NHL level, the Blues do kind of lack goal scoring. That would provide them some serious goal scoring, and his skating is some of the most elite skating in this entire draft, and at 6'1", he can be pretty physical. I really like this guy a decent amount, and as a result, 14th to the St. Louis Blues. That'd be a very good pickup for them. 15th overall, Pittsburgh selects Jake O'Brien. Last year won the Rookie of the Year in the OHL. This year taking yet another step, might hit the 100-point mark. 32 goals, 61 assists, 93 points in 61 games. Elite patience, elite vision. I think he's going to be a good second-line center. You swing for the first-line center on Roger McQueen, then you get the second-line center behind him, and then you just prep for 2026 to absolutely stink. Jake O'Brien would be very good value at 15th overall. 16th overall, this might be a little bit lazy for the Vancouver Canucks, but I went with Cameron Schmidt, the Vancouver Giants player in the WHL. They're probably scouting him a lot. They probably got a lot of film on him and a lot of in-person views. He's only 5'7", but he is, again, one of the best skaters in this draft that really stands out when watching him. He can just blow by defenders with his first couple steps. Extremely skilled. This year, 36 goals, 35 assists, 71 points in 56 games. The size, he plays like he's 6'2". Like he plays like a beast. He definitely has some tenacity. It's not like he's just this all skill guy. Again, the size definitely plays a factor to a degree, but not that much. He's already like 165, 170 pounds. He's very stout, so I would not hate taking a late lottery pick on a guy like Cameron Schmidt. I think he definitely has the offensive upside. Not saying he's like Cole Caulfield 2.0, but he has the offensive upside to really, really hit. At 17th overall, I have Columbus taking Joshua Ravensburger. We're going with a goalie here. When looking at Columbus, don't quite have their goalie of the future sorted out like some of these other young teams, like the Montreal Canadiens that have Jacob Fowler. Detroit has two guys that could potentially hit. San Jose has Askarov. Chicago now has Spencer Knight. So yeah, I think Ravensburger, considering they do have two first-round picks from that Jiricek trade, take a chance on him. 6'6", solid numbers in the WHL. If he hits, he's really, really going to hit. At 18th overall, Montreal from Calgary. I have them selecting, well, not from Calgary. The pick's from the Calgary Flames, but I have them selecting Braden Coots. He does not play for the Calgary Hitmen. I think Braden Coots can be the ideal third-line two-way center for the Montreal Canadiens. He was within my top 25. Not the most impressive guy in terms of raw point totals. He has 58 points in 55 games this season, but just an overall great kid. He's already the captain for the Seattle Thunderbirds. I think he's a slightly worse Constant Helenius from last year, if that makes sense. Montreal already has so many high upside prospects. You just take kind of a safe guy with Braden Coots. You take a little bit of a swing. Now, Lakovic is a very good prospect. I'm not saying that's some kind of reach, but he's definitely more of a high upside guy. You get a solid third line center at 18th overall. You don't need to hit some kind of massive home run. And I don't even think there's really any guys left that, oh my God, I just fucked up my hair, that really could have that potential to be real game changers. Ottawa at 19th overall, and again, it's possible that this pick doesn't exist. This pick gets thrown out considering they have to give up one of their first-round picks this season or next because they didn't disclose a goddamn trade clause to the Vegas Golden Knights, was it? But yeah, I have them selecting Benjamin Kindle, who is killing it in the WHL right now. 34 goals, 62 assists, 96 points in 59 games. He is 5'10", but I think that just the offensive upside is so there, and Ottawa should definitely take a chance. After selecting Yakimchuk, you have your top four of the future kind of solidified. If you're taking this pick, you're not going to have a pick in 2026, so take a swing on a guy that could really hit. Maybe won't hit considering he's only 5'10" and lacks some physicality, but I think if Benjamin Kindle could potentially be a beast. Now we got it 20th overall. Calgary selecting from the New Jersey pick for Markstrom, Cole Reshny, 85 points in 57 games in the WHL. Calgary needs really impact high-end offensive guys. They got it sorted out with Perek. I really like Henry Muse a lot. They got the goalie of the future. Don't quite have an elite offensive prospect right now. Not saying Reshny is some A prospect, but he has the potential to be something special. 21st overall, Columbus from Minnesota, from the Jiricek trade, and I have them selecting kind of a similar player in terms of a right-handed defenseman. And Logan Hensler, not killing it this year at the college level, only 12 points in 32 games, but I think that he can be a solid 25, maybe 30-point second pair, two-way guy, very good third pair guy. If he can be in the 50th to 60th percentile offensively and defensively and play 20 minutes a night, I think that's reasonable. I think that's perfectly fine at 21st overall. Might not have the upside of a David Jiricek, but yeah, I think we see with Logan Hensler, we saw him at the World Juniors. He's not going to take over a game, but he's a reliable two-way guy, and I think for Columbus that has such offensive dynamos on the left side, Werenski and Denton Matejchuk coming up within the system, you just got a stable right-handed guy, 6'2", decently physical. Logan Hensler, although he was challenging Matthew Schaefer at the start of the season, we thought maybe for the top defenseman. That's obviously out the window. Still a good prospect in his own right. Next up for the LA Kings at 22nd overall, I have them selecting Jack Murtaugh out of the U.S. National Team Development Program. They got goaltender of the future, hopefully locked up with Carter George last year, and their young defenseman can't even crack the lineup like Brant Clark for some reason can't. So I went with the Murtaugh. He's arguably been the best forward this season for the U.S. National Team Development Program. I know that's not saying much considering they're kind of shit this year, but 41 points in 40 games this season. Very strong skater, a good athlete in an August 22nd birthday. So he is very young for this draft class. Yeah, I think he can be a very effective second liner for the most part. LA is going to need some. Their guys aren't old by any of the stretch, but some of their guys within their forward core, like Kopitar and a Trevor Moore, Jack Murtaugh would be a very solid prospect. Him and Liam Greenstreet would give them a good 1-2 punch in terms of young forwards. Philadelphia at 23rd from Colorado. I had them taking a chance on Ivan Ryabkin. When looking at Ryabkin, Tortorella, if he can get this guy to actually have a solid motor and give a shit consistently, I think the offensive potential is still there. When looking at what he did last year in the MHL, 58 points in 44 games in Russian juniors. That was not historic, but that was like Michkov, Demidov, then I believe Ryabkin was like third highest points per game in the last 10 or 15 years. So he has the potential. And even in the USHL, he has 9 goals, 7 assists in 16 games as of right now since he got there. So he's rehabbed his stock. Very, very skilled, but at times he doesn't give a shit. So hopefully, again, Tortorella can turn that around. You have 3 first-round picks. Take a chance. Speaking of, at 24th overall, we're actually flipping that. They're not taking a chance on this, considering they went Murka, they went Ryabkin. I have them going a little bit safe at 24th overall with Malcolm Spence. Coming into the season, we thought Spence might be a top 10 pick. Hasn't really quite produced offensively, still at around a point per game. But in terms of this guy's floor, I think he has a very high floor. I think he's going to be a good middle sixer in the NHL for a while, considering he has that very good motor. He's 6'2". He shows good traits offensively in terms of playmaking and has a solid shot. So I think for Philadelphia, just lock up a solid middle sixer here. You took your 2 decent gambles. Ryabkin's kind of a serious gamble. Murka, I think, is at worst going to be a solid second pair guy because he's 6'6" and so skilled. But yeah, take 2 gambles, then kind of get a sure thing with Malcolm Spence. And then lastly, at 25th overall, I had the Nashville Predators selecting American Blake Fidler, who is currently playing in the WHL. He's basically like a better version of Andrew Gibson that's currently on their team. I know Andrew Gibson made the World Juniors team, but he didn't play that good. And when looking at Blake Fidler, 6'4", right-handed defenseman, more of a defensive guy for sure, can be very physical, but also has shown there's some offense there. 29 points in 59 games, a July birthday, so a little bit young for this draft class. I think he can be a good, okay second pair guy or a very good lockdown third pair guy. So for Nashville, after going a little bit smaller with James Higgins, beef up that defense prospect pool. They have Tanner Molendyk, but beyond that, I don't think they have a ton. So definitely use this pick for a defenseman. You don't have to, obviously, if you love a forward, but I think that they probably would go defenseman with this draft pick. But yeah, let me know in the comments. What do you think about this mock draft? Next time we'll be doing the full first round. I'll be seeing the next one. Peace.